haunted doll with a human brain. Say hello to Letta the doll, one of the most haunted dolls in the world. 46 years ago, the doll was discovered buried deep underneath a house by Kerry Walton. He ended up taking the antique home with him to sell for his collectibles business. Very soon after this, Kerry realized his grave mistake. Inside the home, the doll would roam and whisper, "Let me out." Following a reading from a psychic, the doll's origins were traced back to 100 years ago to European nomads. Supposedly, the reason the doll is possessed by what used to be the son of a puppeteer. The paranormal activity Letta stirs up is very well documented on camera.
This is the photo of the girl who was turned into a human bodysuit. Yeah, they skinned her. There are real photos of the crime on the internet. I can't show them to you, obviously, but you can Google them. It was a 23-year-old college student who was struggling with depression. She ended up being sent to a psychiatric clinic on November 12, 1998, but ended up going missing instead. Her mother reported her missing to the authorities, and they told her to wait. And if they didn't wait, she might still be with us. And then in January 1999, a couple months later, a tugboat crew found human skin and her leg floating in the water. And initially, people thought this was an accident, but like, how does that become an accident? Like, when you see the photos, that was no accident. But then they kind of realized, oh, someone deliberately removed all of her skin and fashioned it into a bodysuit. Very unfortunately, the case went cold for a really long time. And then in 2014 to 2017, there was a lead. Notice the psychological profile of this guy named Robert J. He had really disturbing tendencies. He worked at a zoology institute where he killed the rabbits with no explanation, and he fit the profile of the perpetrator. But there's no real evidence that says that he did this crime, so they ended up letting him go. Unfortunately, justice has not been served for her yet. Her killer has not been found. And if you want to see the crime scene photos, just Google Katarzyna crime, because they're too disturbing to show here. Over here for more content.
Urban legends that ended up being real, part 23.
Tombstone Thunderbird. It is said to be spotted in Tombstone, Arizona. It's a huge bird with a wingspan that stretches over 20 feet long, and it comes out during storms. The most well-known account comes from 1890 when two ranchers in Tombstone claimed to have encountered and killed a creature matching the Thunderbird's description. The massive bird attacked their livestock, forcing them to shoot it down. They described it as having leathery bat-like wings and looked more like a dinosaur than a bird. The men dragged the bird back to town, where a photograph of them standing with the massive creature was taken. This photo has become one of the greatest mysteries of the legend. And in 1977, a family in Lawndale, Illinois claimed that a thunderbird attacked their young son while he was out playing in the yard. The bird tried to carry the boy away before being scared off by the family. And the most recent sighting comes from 2020 when a group of campers in the forests of Pennsylvania claimed to see a shadow pass over their campsite, blocking out the moonlight. But when they looked up, they described a bird so large it seemed to glide silently across the sky, and its wings created a whooshing sound as it disappeared into darkness.
This man got his face eaten off by another man, and whatever you do, don't look up the video or picture. On May 26, 2012, Rudy Eugene, who was on the left, attacked and maimed Ronald Popo, who was on the right, who was a homeless man in Miami, Florida. During the 18-minute-long filmed encounter, Eugene accused Popo of stealing his Bible, beat him unconscious, removed Popo's pants, and bit most of Popo's face off, including his eyes, leaving him blind in both eyes. Eugene then became known as the Miami Zombie, and he was fatally shot by police that day. On the morning of May 26, 2012, 31-year-old Rudy Eugene drove to Miami Beach, who was completely naked at this time, encountered 65-year-old Ronald Popo at approximately 1:55 p.m. Ronald Popo had been lying underneath the elevator Metro Mover when Eugene began to pummel him. He then stripped him of his pants and bit him in the face. A guy riding his bike rode by all of this happening and called 911 to alert the authorities. A few minutes later, the authorities arrived, and after double-checking the spectacle that was in front of them, they warned Eugene to stop attacking Popo. Eugene ignored the officers' warnings and instead growled at them like a dog, and then resumed biting off Popo's face. The attack ended at 2:13 p.m. when Officer Ramirez shot Eugene once, which proved ineffective, and then he shot him another 4 times. This whole ordeal was captured on security cameras, and you can literally watch the entire 18-minute attack. After all of this happened, Ronald Papa was admitted to the hospital in critical condition, with 75 to 80% of his face above the beard completely missing. He underwent facial reconstruction surgeries that took months to complete, but he remained permanently disfigured and blind. Ronald Papa lost his eyebrows, his nose, parts of his forehead and cheek, and his left eye, and was left totally blind due to the damage to his remaining right eye. He underwent numerous surgeries to repair the damage to his face, and after rehabilitation, he put on 50 pounds and relearned how to dress, feed himself, shower, and shave. I feel so bad for Ronald Papa, and I can't believe this even happened. This whole case seems out of a video game, and I can't believe it's real. Whatever you do, don't look up the aftermath photos or the video of this happening because it's absolutely disturbing and I bet you don't want to see it. But yeah, that's the case of the Miami zombie.
What if I told you that the Kardashians' fame and fortune wasn't the result of luck, but that of witchcraft? Let me share with you the legend of Kardashian. This is apparently Kardashian. And the story goes that she was an ancestor of the Kardashians that lived in Armenia centuries ago. The story goes a few different ways. I've heard versions where she was not treated properly. And then I heard some versions where that was left out. But she was apparently desperate for power. She ended up finding a secret coven of witches. She offered her soul in turn for beauty, wealth, power, and influence for her and all her descendants. Well, I guess just for her descendants. And that's where the Kardashians come in, of course. And now they have everything that I mentioned that Kiko gave her soul for. But there was apparently a price. And you may have heard of this, the Kardashian curse. The theory is that men that get involved with this family face misfortune in their futures. Now, was that just a coincidence? Or was it all because of this apparent Kardashian? I would love to hear what you think. Please let me know. I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.
Imagine you're asleep at a hotel and you hear a noise and this is what you see. This is the urban legend of a woman named Barbara Q who was supposedly super evil. This happened in the 1970s in Louisiana, and she happened to own, it was like a hotel and breakfast place. She was known to be super nice, everybody liked her, but what they liked the most was her breakfast stew. This stew was super popular, everyone from around the world would come eat it. This story takes a dark turn when a traveler named Ray checks in the hotel. This happened in September of 1972, and he just came across her hotel and decided to come in. However, she started acting super weird. She weirdly asked the man if anybody knew he was there. He was confused for a while, but then he said no, which was very odd. He was peacefully sleeping when all of a sudden he's awakened by a weird noise. The noise was coming from the hallway. He turned on the light and this is what he saw. Barbara standing right at the feet of the bed. She was arrested and told the cops that they usually don't fight back. He was talking about the travelers. And she confessed that the reason why her beef stew was super good was because she used people for it. What do we think about this crazy urban legend?
These are the world's most haunted dolls, starting at number 4. Letta the doll, a 200-year-old wooden doll with human hair. She was discovered beneath a house in Australia. Carrie Walton, the caretaker of this doll, witnessed many strange things ever since he took her inside his home. Marks on the floor, objects mysteriously moving, and strange noises at night. Number 3. Okiku. This doll was purchased by a young man in 1918 in Japan as a gift for his younger sister. Tragically, after a year, the little girl passed away from a severe case of the flu. Sometime later, the family noticed something off about the doll's hair. It was originally short, and it has grown past its shoulder. Until this day, the doll's hair is maintained on a regular basis because it never stopped growing. Number 2. Annabelle. Known for its infamous movie releases and stories with Ed and Lorraine Warren, we do know that this doll is possessed by something that is evil. And whoever held this doll suffered from many bad things. Therefore, the doll is now stored in the Warren Museum, safe and sealed. But Annabelle is not the most haunted doll, because coming at number 1, Robert. Robert is not an ordinary doll. This thing is sinister. This doll is possessed by a demon, and it speaks to children. In Florida, in the early 1900s, this doll was gifted to a young boy named Robert Eugene, and his parents always used to hear Robert and his doll speak in the bedroom alone, and the family used to hear the voice of the doll respond. Eugene kept his doll till 1974 until he passed away at an old age. No one knew why this old man kept his doll for more than 70 years. After his death, Robert was given to the East Martello Museum. Visitors who have taken his picture without permission claim to have experienced terrible misfortune. If you visit Robert in the museum, you will see that this doll is surrounded by apology letters and also other letters, like permission to look at him, and no one dares to take a picture of Robert.
Urban legends that ended up being real, part 23.
Tombstone Thunderbird. It is said to be spotted in Tombstone, Arizona. It's a huge bird with a wingspan that stretches over 20 feet long, and it comes out during storms. The most well-known account comes from 1890 when 2 ranchers in Tombstone claimed to have encountered and killed a creature matching the Thunderbird's description. The massive bird attacked their livestock, forcing them to shoot it down. They described it as having leathery, bat-like wings and looked more like a dinosaur than a bird. The men dragged the bird back to town, where a photograph of them standing with the massive creature was taken. This photo has become one of the greatest mysteries of the legend. And in 1977, a family in Lawndale, Illinois claimed that a Thunderbird attacked their young son while he was out playing in the yard. The bird tried to carry the boy away before being scared off by the family. And the most recent sighting comes from 2020 when a group of campers in the forests of Pennsylvania claimed to see a shadow pass over their campsite, blocking out the moonlight. But when they looked up, they described a bird so large it seemed to glide silently across the sky, and its wings created a whooshing sound as it disappeared into darkness.
This is the outfit that baby Evelyn was wearing when her body was discovered. This is just one of the many disturbing items brought out as evidence during her trial. They also showed the trash can that her body was discovered in. She was placed inside this small trash bin, wrapped tightly in a blanket with aluminum foil also wrapped around her entire head. And the onesie that she was wearing was covered in insects when she was found. This is the playhouse that her body was discovered in. The playhouse was located on Megan's father's property, which was Evelyn's grandfather, and he is the person who reported Evelyn missing in the beginning. This case is extremely disturbing. I cannot mentally fathom how anyone could do this to a child, let alone their own child. Let's all keep praying that this baby girl gets the justice that she deserves.
This young man lost his entire lower body and one of his arms and survived. In 2019, 18-year-old Lauren was working at a construction job in Great Falls, Montana, when suddenly his life changed in a single horrifying moment. The forklift he was operating veered off a bridge, plunging approximately 50 feet and crushed his lower body beneath the machine. The impact shattered his pelvis, mangled his right arm, and destroyed everything below his waist. After arriving at the hospital, doctors told him that unless they amputated virtually the entire lower half of his body and part of his arm, he would die. He made the heart-wrenching decision to live. The result was a rare and radical surgery removing his legs, pelvis, and part of his right arm. Recovery was brutal. Lauren underwent dozens of surgeries, faced infections, and fought excruciating pain. At one point, he revealed he needed a fecal transplant to restore his gut health after the trauma and multiple operations. Lauren and his wife Sabia posted their journey on social media, documenting the accident, recovery, and moving on from it. From a moment of unimaginable tragedy, Lauren's story has become one of survival, transformation, and the raw will to keep living, even when everything was taken away.
This is the photo of the girl who was turned into a human bodysuit. Yeah, they skinned her. There are real photos of the crime on the internet. I can't show them to you, obviously, but you can Google them. It was a 23-year-old college student who was struggling with depression. She ended up being sent to a psychiatric clinic on November 12, 1998, but ended up going missing instead. Her mother reported her missing to the authorities and they told her to wait. And if they didn't wait, she might still be with us. And then in January 1999, a couple months later, a tugboat crew found human skin and her leg floating in the water. And initially, people thought this was an accident, but like, how does that become an accident? Like, when you see the photos, that was no accident. But then they kind of realized, oh, someone deliberately removed all of her skin and fashioned it into a bodysuit. Very unfortunately, the case went cold for a really long time. And then in 2014 to 2017, there was a lead. Notice the psychological profile of this guy named Robert J. He had really disturbing tendencies. He worked at a zoology institute where he killed the rabbits with no explanation, and he fit the profile of the perpetrator. But there's no real evidence that says that he did this crime, so they ended up letting him go. Unfortunately, justice has not been served for her yet. Her killer has not been found. And if you want to see the crime scene photos, just Google Katarzyna crime, because they're too disturbing to show here. Over here for more content.
Spoonfuls of cum were force-fed to students by this elementary school teacher in California. This is Mark Burnt, one of the most disturbed pedophiles in American history. So, for more than 30 years before he was arrested, Mark taught at the Miramonte Elementary School in Los Angeles County. Yes, this is a photo of him with a student. In 2011, authorities began investigating Mark because of some disturbing photographs that were turned into the police. The photographs showed children in Mark's classroom with their eyes blindfolded and their mouths covered in tape. And some of the photos, sorry, I'm literally gagging recording this, and some of these photos showed Mark offering these young children, elementary school children, girls, a blue spoon full of a milky white liquid. Investigators believe that this was Mark's own discharge. And they eventually found a spoon that matched the spoon in the photos in Mark's trash. It tested positive for semen, and when they did further investigation, it tested positive for Mark's DNA. Some of the photos recovered showed Mark holding children in his arms, putting his hands over their mouths, and in some of the photos, Mark had actually placed Madagascar cockroaches on top of these children on their faces and then photographed them. This whole investigation started when a local photo processing facility saw the photographs that Mark had turned in to be developed, and then turned those over to the police. He was eventually charged with abusing almost 24 children from ages 6 to 10 years old, both boys and girls, and afterwards he was sentenced to 117 years in prison, meaning he will die in custody. Now, these stories are just all too common in America, and I really don't know what we can do to combat this problem. And every time I cover one of these stories, I lose a little more hope and faith in humanity. But I expose these freaks in depth every single week on my channel, so please consider subscribing and checking it out. Or you can listen to the show on any podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's called The Conspiracy Files.
What's the scariest urban legend from your state? Today we're talking about Louisiana. While this house may be beautiful, it allegedly has a very dark history. This is Myrtle's Plantation, and it was originally owned by Mr. and Mrs. Clark Woodruff. Mr. Woodruff was a judge in town, and he did own several slaves, which is terrible in itself, but his cruelty seemed to be targeted towards one person specifically. Allegedly, Chloe would work inside the house, and his cruelty fell on her. He was exceptionally, it was almost like he was targeting her specifically. Chloe did try to protect herself from this violence, and she would do this by listening in on conversations between the couple, trying to find ways to ease the violence towards her. But one day she was caught eavesdropping on the couple, and in order to punish her, Mr. Woodruff cut off her ears. Now, in order to hide this mutilation that he had done to this poor girl, he made her wear a green turban around the house so no one would see what he had done. Chloe's still desperate to get on the right side of this family. On the 9th birthday of their daughter, she baked them a cake and poisoned this cake with oleander leaves. Some say it was not her intention to do any harm, just to make the family sick so that she could nurse them back to health, because healers were some of the most respected people in this area. Unfortunately, she put too much oleander leaves into this cake and the family passed away. When Chloe's actions were found out, she was hanged in public and then thrown into the Mississippi River. But that's not the end to the tragedies in this house. The new family that bought the house would die due to tuberculosis, and then the next owner would be shot in his front yard. This place has been changed through several hands. It was even a movie set at one point, and everyone says that this is probably one of the most haunted places in the United States. The reported ghost happenings started in the 1970s. Here is a picture that was taken for insurance purposes. This was not supposed to be to capture any paranormal activity. And when they developed it, they saw this woman here, and it kind of looks like she might be wearing something on her head. So people really think that this is the ghost of Chloe. Something else that's strange is this handprint seems to stay on this mirror. This was near where the children apparently died. And this handprint appears on this mirror in this hallway specifically. And no matter, even if they change the mirror, like exchange mirrors, clean it, nothing, that handprint is always there. People also say that you can hear the stomps from men walking up and down the halls. There's ghostly apparitions, like you can see the children in the Woodruff children in the mirrors and stuff like that. But people still debate on whether Chloe ever existed or not. Currently, this is a bed and breakfast and you can stay the night. So would you? Do you think it's haunted? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more creepy things.
This is yet to be confirmed by authorities, but it is being reported that the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, Christian Bruckner, may have taken pictures of her and or other children and buried them in his underground secret hideaway. A source told news outlet The Sun that authorities investigating now know that Christian Bruckner buried data carriers such as hard drives and USB sticks at any of the places where he'd stayed. And that was their main focus when they searched a man-made reservoir in the Algarve back in May. They conducted this search because they believed that Bruckner frequented the area, but it has been reported that nothing was found. But now a source told The Sun, quote, they really thought they might find pictures there, but they are not giving up hope. They believe he made duplicates because he loved to keep them like trophies. So cops are now trying to find out more about Christian Bruckner's movements, likely so that they can determine if there's anywhere else they can search for this possible evidence. While it is being reported that Christian Bruckner is going to be charged in connection with Madeleine McCann's disappearance, no official charges have been brought forward. He remains in prison for other charges, but it does seem like both German and Portugal authorities are very interested in him in connection with Madeleine's disappearance. So we'll see how this develops further.
The strangest unsolved mysteries from each state. Today we have Alabama. This was literally the only photo of her. Anyways, this is Ruth Purcell Morphy Dorsey. She was 69 years old and she was a Sunday school teacher in Opelika's First Baptist Church. She would always go to work, she was very punctual, but then one day in 1974, she just did not show up to church. Everyone was worried because this was just so out of character for Ruth, because you know anybody named Ruth wouldn't do this. They report her as a missing person to the Lee County deputies and they go to her house on Route 1 to check on her. When they get there, they find the front door is completely open and the side door is unlocked. She had 3 dogs and they were all huddling in the corner of the bathroom together. And her bed was made and appeared to not have been slept in, even though her neighbor said that they saw her pull into her driveway the night before. If she was there the night before, why wasn't her bed slept in? Her Bible and her Sunday school lesson were all on the table and her car was found in downtown Opelika with the keys in the ignition. Her purse, her wallet, and her glasses were all there and nothing seemed to be missing. And there have been no withdrawals from her bank account since she disappeared.
Just when I thought I heard about all the worst cults in history, this one had to come and blow them out of the water. This is Colonia Dignidad. They were a German torture cult hiding out in the Chilean wilderness after World War II, aka Yazis. And to show you how terrible they were, let me tell you a story. As a quick reminder, if you want more info, you can check out the podcast. The leader of this cult was a known child abuser, and he wanted more Chilean boys to be brought to him. So he started a hospital in the community and used it as a trafficking system to get more children. One day, a young Chilean boy choked and was rushed to the hospital. And right when he got there, a nurse scooped him up, brought him to a room, and saved his life. But later that day, his sister arrived and asked a nurse when she could pick him up to take him home. And the nurse responded that they needed to monitor him for a few more days, which is pretty suspect in a choking case. So a few days later, she comes back and she's like, okay, can I get my brother? And the nurse tells her that he's not there anymore. And this is because the hospital had lawyers on staff that were drafting up adoption paperwork when young boys would come in. The cult was able to legally adopt boys in the community without the parents' consent, and the parents had not enough money to do anything about it. There are so many more stories about this place, and I had never heard of it before, so make sure you check out this week's episode for more info.
5 bodies, 5 days, all in one Texas city. And a chilling question. Could there be a serial killer on the loose? Since 2017, almost 200 bodies have been pulled from Houston's bayous, a number so staggering it's left the city on edge. According to newly released data, 189 bodies have been recovered in the last 8 years. 17 were ruled murders. 75 more are simply marked as unexplained. The fear really exploded in late September when 5 bodies surfaced in just 5 days. Officials insist there's no serial killer. They blame homelessness, drugs, and accidents along Houston's 2,500 miles of waterways. But critics say that theory doesn't match the victims. Retired NYPD Sergeant Joseph Giacalone says the sheer number of cases means investigators should be looking for patterns or connections. And private investigator Coleman Ryan, hired by one victim's family, says he isn't convinced by the mayor's denial. Victims include 20-year-old Jade Elise McKissick, last seen leaving a bar before her body was found in Bray's Bayou, and 22-year-old Kenneth Cutting Jr., whose autopsy report contained a mistaken entry from another case, prompting calls to reopen his investigation. In total, nearly 40% of these deaths remain undetermined. Most victims are young adults, and 27 bodies have already been found this year alone. Authorities maintain there is no serial killer. With the numbers this high and answers this thin, many in Houston believe something much more sinister may be happening in the bayous. Stay tuned to the Crime Desk for more updates on this shocking story.
This woman literally chopped her baby's arms off with a kitchen knife, all because God told her to. Dina and John Schlosser lived in Plano, Texas with their 3 daughters, ages 9, 6, and 10 months old. On November 22nd, 2004, John got a call from Dina saying she'd just cut off their baby's arms. He thought she was joking, even though Dina had a history of mental illness. Regardless, when you hear a claim like that, it should be taken seriously. Instead of calling the police, John called the pastor of his church. The pastor told John to call someone who can check on Dina and their baby Margaret to make sure everything is okay. He then called his neighbor Carolyn, who worked at a daycare center in the area, and asked for them to check on Dina and Margaret. Carolyn called Margaret on the phone, and that's when things started to get real. It's unclear what the phone call entailed, but whatever it was, it led a fellow daycare employee to call the police. 911 dispatcher Steve Edwards then called Dina to see if everything was okay. Dina picked up the phone and calmly told Steve she just cut off her baby's arms. Steve asked Dina if she wanted to help her baby, and she smugly said no. As if this woman didn't already seem crazy enough, Steve said he heard church hymns playing in the background. Like, what is this woman's deal? With that, police officers and paramedics rushed to the scene. Officer David Tilley was the first to arrive. He found Dina covered in red fluid with a gash on her shoulder and a 9-inch kitchen blade in her hand. One report said she was sitting at her computer table, casually reading her Bible with the gospel song "He Touched Me" playing in the background. Oh my god, this is like straight out of a horror movie. David was able to convince Dina to hand him the blade, and when she did, he noticed pieces of flesh on it. Ugh, I bet his stomach was in knots. More officers showed up, and they found the almost 11-month-old baby Margaret in her crib in the back bedroom. Sadly, the claims were true. Margaret's arms had indeed been cut off, and she was losing fluid quickly. Margaret was rushed to the hospital while officers interviewed Dina. Dina showed absolutely no emotion during her interview. She admitted to cutting off her baby's arms with a dazed look in her eyes. Apparently, Dina saw this story on the news about a lion attacking a young boy and took it as a sign of the apocalypse. God then commanded her to cut off the arms of her baby, and she obeyed. Dina also said God told her to cut her arms off after that, which is why she had the wound on her shoulder. During her interview, Dina was praying. She said, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord." She was also humming church hymns. It's so messed up. As for Margaret, it was too late to save her. Not only were both of her arms completely severed at the shoulder, but Margaret also had over 50 wounds on her face.